Welcome back to Perkins Pipes. A little chilly out here today, but it's a beautiful day, and so I wanted to record one for you. Haven't had this guy out for a while, I think. The Black Prince that I had made back in 2023. So I wanted to bring out a Prince because, well, it's kind of elegant, and I'm going to be mentioning one king in this, so a little bit of royalty. And I must say, a bit of meanness. Yes, you heard that right. So let's get this guy lit. Let's get to talking. There we go. So there's something that some of us enjoy, something I think others of us may enjoy but won't admit it. I'm talking about characters in film, television, plays, whatever, who say the sorts of rather mean-spirited, sharp-edged, cutting things that we would never say. But somehow or another, we like it when they do. Now, I'm going to get right out there in front of it and admit to you, I enjoy some of that. You say, well, Steve, that's not very nice, and you claim to be a Christian guy and so forth. Okay, well, let me throw a little Aristotle at us. One of the things Aristotle talks about in his Poetics is the cathartic function of drama, specifically tragedy. And it allows the audience to share, to experience vicariously certain emotions, things that we might not express otherwise, anger and so forth, some of the maybe the uglier emotions. And for a bit of time, we can experience that and get it out of our system. Now, I like to think that I'm a reasonably nice guy. I like to think that I'm not hateful and mean-spirited, and I try not to say cutting things to people. But I can get some pleasure out of it when I see it in print or I see it in film. And I think it performs a little bit of that cathartic aspect that Aristotle was talking about. So I want to walk you through let's see, 1, 2, 3, 5. 5 examples of this. So I'm going to pull up a little text here. So many of you know that one of my all-time favorite poet is Alexander Pope, lived from 1688 to 1744. And among the things that he would write, there could be a sharpness and some satire in what he wrote. For example, he often took aim at other writers and people who were really not that good. In one of his poems, he has this one line, "Still Dunce the Second reigns like Dunce the First." I find that kind of funny. I find out a little bit of music. Here's another one. "Words are like leaves, and where they most abound, much fruit of sense beneath is rarely found." And it's true when you think about it. We really like to go on and on and on and on. They talk, they write a lot, and honestly, there's not a lot of meaning, there's not a lot of sense underneath that. Pope just had the guts to say it. He talks about how people will come to ask him to offer his opinion on their writings. And he's writing to a friend of his named John, and he says, Shut the door, good John, fatigued I said. Tie up the knocker, say I'm sick, I'm dead. The dog star rages, nay, 'tis past a doubt, all Bedlam or Parnassus is let out. Fire in each eye and papers in each hand, they rave, recite, and madden round the land. So what he means by that, Bedlam was the name for the Bethlehem Mental Hospital in London at the time. Parnassus was the ancient home of the Greek muses, and he says, I got to tell you, he says, when these guys come around to ask for my opinion, it's like the insane asylum has been let out, or people who are really, truly inspired, and you can't tell which. And then he says, and a few lines later, he says, a dire dilemma. Either way, I'm sped. If foes, they write. If friends, they read me dead. So foes who will write bad things about him, friends just keep reading stuff to him until he's like, oh, I wish I were dead. Seized and tied down to judge how wretched I, who can't be silent and who will not lie. To laugh were want of goodness and of grace, and to be grave exceeds all power of face. In other words, it's not nice to laugh at people, but to be honest, I don't think I can help it. My face can't hold back laughing at some of the idiot stuff that people are reading to me. So I find that kind of stuff, like I say, I found Pope amusing. I like his stuff. Now, you say, okay, well, that's poetry, and that's from another time period and so forth. How about something a little more modern? Well, Maggie Smith played the Dowager Countess of Grantham in the beloved television series Downton Abbey. And for many people, she was the favorite character because as an older lady, she felt free to say whatever she wanted in pretty much any situation. And often, it was a little sharp-edged. For example, she quipped at one point, she says, I know several couples who are perfectly happy, haven't spoken in years. Well, that's not the thing you typically come out and say, but she said it. And then one of her friends at one point says, how you hate to be wrong. And the Dowager Countess replies, I wouldn't know. I'm not familiar with the sensation. Cracks me up. She said, this is true. She's talking to, I think it's one of her granddaughters. She says, vulgarity is no substitute for wit. True. And maybe that one should be said a little bit more often. Now, as a member of the British upper class, she did not have a high view of Americans, even though her son married an American. And her daughter-in-law says to her at one point, talking about someone else, talking about her daughter, the Dowager Countess's granddaughter, she says, I might send her over to visit my aunt. She could get to know New York. And the Dowager Countess says, oh, I don't think things are quite that desperate. And then she's got, there's a woman that, in fact, I think it's her daughter-in-law's mother has come over from England, or has come over to England from America. And at one point she says, I have no wish to be a great lady. And the Dowager Countess says, no, a decision that must be reinforced whenever you look in the glass. She is not afraid to poke fun at the British as well. And she says to the chauffeur at one point, she says, if I were to search for logic, I would not look for it among the English upper class. And finally, she has another exchange with her daughter-in-law. And her daughter-in-law says, I take that as a compliment. To which the Dowager Countess replies, I must have said it wrong. No, I'm sorry. This stuff cracks me up. And if you're going, well, this is just too much for me, then you know what? Pass on to a different video. My favorite line of hers, though, is this one. She says to a friend, she says, there's nothing simpler than avoiding people you don't like. Avoiding one's friends, that's the real test. And I think we've all felt that time to time. Now, you say, okay, well, that's England. We aren't like that in America, are we? Yes, we are. Some of you have enjoyed the television series, I think from the earlier 2000s, called House. Now, it featured the British actor Hugh Laurie playing the American doctor, Dr. Gregory House, who was known for his just brutally blunt comments. At one point he says, I don't ask patients why. He says, I don't ask why patients lie. I just assume they all do. One of his lines he says to one of his fellow doctors, he says, it's normal to be screwed up. but it's really screwed up to romanticize it. My favorite one is, he's talking to another doctor, and they both were wrong about something. And he says, well, that makes us both wrong. Not equally wrong. You were at least 6 wronger. Well, my all-time favorite sharp lines come from Peter O'Toole and the character he played of King Henry II in the classic films. Originally, he played the character in the movie Becket, which I believe I've talked about on this channel before. He reprised the role some years later, Henry as an older man, in The Lion in Winter, in which he played opposite Katharine Hepburn. And I'm going to start actually with the second one, because it has some good lines, but the best come from Becket itself. So at one point, Henry and his wife, Eleanor of Aquitaine, had this notoriously bad relationship, just biting and carping at each other all the time. And in the movie The Lion in Winter, at one point, he looks over and he says, well, what shall we, it's Christmas time. And he says, what shall we hang? The holly or each other? And then he admits, this has kind of been the way he's had to live his life. He says, I've snapped and plotted all my life. There's no other way to be alive, king, and 50 all at once. Now, at one point, the young King Philip from France has come over to England to visit. And the older King Henry says, now hear me, boy. And the young Philip snaps. He says, I am a king. I am no man's boy. And Henry replies, a king? Because you put your ass on purple cushions? Good stuff. My all-time favorite, though, best set of kind of sharp lines come from the movie Becket. And he is, he's having an argument with his wife. He says, you have never given me anything but your carping mediocrity and your everlasting obsession with your puny little person and what you thought was due to it. Now, I can't imagine actually saying that to somebody, but I imagine we've all encountered somebody like that. And we probably wished we could have said something like that, or that we even had the vocabulary to say it in the first place. Now, when he says that to his wife, she fires back. She says, I gave you my youth. I gave you your children. And Henry fires right back, I don't like my children. And as for your youth, that withered flower pressed between the pages of a hymn book since you were 12 years old, with its watery blood and stale insipid scent, you can bid farewell to that without a tear. Your body was an empty desert, madam, which duty forced me to wander in alone. But you have never been a wife to me. And again, I hopefully no married couple would actually act like that, but again, kind of gets it out of our system. And at one point, he goes out and he encounters some of his subjects, and they're too awed of the king, or they don't even want to speak, and they just stand there silent. And Henry says, odd the number of dumb people I meet when I set out of my palace. I rule over a kingdom of mutes. So, what can I say? I enjoy some of the sharper, a little bit more satiric lines. Again, kind of gets it out of the system. I try to be a nice guy most of the time. But sometimes you just got to let that stuff out. Now, here's my request. If you think I'm a complete jerk about that, well, then don't offer me a sharp line back, okay? Nobody wants to be on the receiving end of those lines. So if you think that I'm a jerk, leave it alone. But if you know what I'm talking about, The desire to say those things that you know good and well you would never do in real life and in real situations. But you kind of enjoy hearing them in movies and television shows and literature just as a way to kind of get it out of your own system. Tell me what you think about that. Or about any of those lines in particular that I shared in this video. Folks, as Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I say in Latin, Parva ago ut tandem, nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.